All right, my friends, welcome back. I'm John, and today we're going to do a video that I'm super excited about. I've been planning on this for a long time, and that is the top 10 best-selling vehicles of all time. I'm going to say up front that this ended up being a little more work and a little more confusing than I expected it to be. I'm going to jump into it in a second here, but we've got to lay a couple of ground rules. The first is, if you go out there and you look and you find different lists that other people put together, there's sometimes a lot of variation. And number two is, I'm kind of a purist. I want to consider a car that has the same platform and has been consistently refined over time, like the Model T. But the undisputed number one is the Corolla. Sorry, spoiler alert, right? But that is over multiple generations, sold around the world, even where the hatchback version is on a different platform than a sedan sold somewhere else. That feels like it doesn't have any integrity to me. Not the platform, but it's just a nameplate at that point. So I had to just kind of buy into that, because I don't want to get into being the one deciding, well, did this change in this model year mean it's a completely different car? I don't want to get into that. So I went ahead and just bought into that. I feel kind of dirty doing it, but I went ahead and bought into it. But as I was looking through some of these lists, there's other vehicles that clearly sold more, but they weren't included. And there's one in particular. Stay tuned to the end. There's one that I feel it's got to be on the list, but I could not find a historic number for how many this vehicle sold. Now, this list has some surprises to me. It has a car on it I didn't expect. It had a car on it that I've barely even heard of and had no idea it sold that many. But what I did is I came up with a top 10, and number 10 is the Model T with over 16.5 million sold. It was the one that held the record for something like 45 or 47 years after it finally stopped selling. What a piece of history. Absolutely love it. Just at the dawn of people being put into cars, of realizing the flexibility that cars could provide them, this vehicle sold for so many years in a much, much smaller economy, a smaller world, a smaller United States, to sell 16.5 million vehicles and launch one of the best auto manufacturers in the world really holds a place in my heart right there. Number 9, a little bit of a surprise to me, the Honda Accord. Sold over 17 million so far. Best numbers I've got on all of these, the best numbers I can find up to as much date as I could find. So if I'm off a little bit, man, I apologize. Okay, feel free to correct me. But 17 million sold. Next up, the Lotta Riva. Now this one is the one I'm talking about that I barely even heard of, okay? But it turns out I had. This is based on the Fiat 124, Vaz, V-A-Z, I believe is how you pronounce it. Sold 2 variations of it, I believe. And then the Lotta, Communist Russia, they started producing it. They ended up selling this thing through 2012, from 1970 to 2012, and sold over 17.75 million of them. And that does not include the Fiat 124, the Seat 124, and the Seat 1430s. I mean, so this is well over 17.75 million. It probably could have moved up a couple of spots, but I couldn't get the numbers together. What an amazing, amazing car. Something I barely even heard of, that once the Soviet Union collapsed, they still sold them when they finally canceled them, because the streets were being crowded with, Volkswagens and SUVs and things like that. There was an outcry. One of those cars that it wasn't considered terribly reliable, but people loved it for its durability. In one interview I read, the guy had 1 million kilometers on it. It was about half new parts, but it had just continued to last through those harsh roads and through those harsh winters. It just kept chugging for 42 years. What an amazing vehicle that I've never seen in person, obviously. Next up, number 7, another surprise to me, the Honda Civic has sold over 18 million units. Now, once I saw this, it surprised me because how is the Corolla selling so much more? I think the Civic is just such a better vehicle. What are we? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Number 6, the Opel Corsa. Now, I know of this vehicle, and I've certainly heard of it. I think I've seen tests of it on like Top Gear and things like that, but I had no clue that it sold over 18 million units. And right above that at number 5, the Ford Escort with over, again, 18 million units. This one I kind of knew about because I know from the histories that I read of especially British sales, the Escort was a huge hit. And so I'm not surprised to see it on the list. I am a little surprised at the number, over 18 million, but good for them. You know, it's interesting, the Escort that was sold in Europe is different than the Escort that was sold here in America, and certainly when the Escort in America moved to a Mazda platform. But still, we're going by nameplates, right? So the Escort comes in there at number 5. Number 4, and this one kind of surprised me how low it was, honestly, but with over 21.5 million sales, the VW Beetle. And by my list, this should be number 1. Really, this list should be 2. It should be the Model T and the VW Beetle, maybe the VW Type 2, the van being in there, because I think it sold something like 18 million as well. But the VW Beetle, almost 70 years, 65 years of sales with just constant refinement along the way. Not saying it's the perfect car, but boy, it came pretty darn close, and truly the spiritual successor of the Model T, of constant and never-ending improvement. But here it falls to number 4. Number 3, and this one surprised me, the VW Golf. Now, I know the Golf is a good seller, especially around the world. Here in America, it's never really caught fire. I plan on doing a video that's going to be titled something like My Perfect Car, and it is the VW Golf. I've mentioned it in several other videos. I love the Golf. I think it's just about perfect. My wife doesn't like them. My wife doesn't like hatchbacks. And as I've said before, my wife says that when you drive a Golf, it doesn't say that you're successful. It says that you're borrowing your daughter's car. But in Europe, it's the perfect size. It's reliable. It's durable. It's got a sense of solidity to it with really, really good use of space. And I feel more upmarket materials than you find in most of its competitors or Asian vehicles. So not surprised it's a good seller. I am surprised it hits number 3 on this list. Number 2, and the one that I've basically never seen on any other list. This is one I'm shoehorning in here. Ford F-150. This son of a gun has sold over 41 million vehicles. Now, if you want to argue that it's not a car, I get that because it is the truck listed here. But I wanted to put it on the list because at 41 million vehicles, you can't deny how strong a seller it was. And finally, number 1, the Toyota Corolla. The car that we all love to hate because it's as exciting as vanilla ice cream, as reliable as a hunk of metal. I respect this car. I don't love this car. You know what? If I really just wanted a car I never had to think about and I just gave up on any sort of excitement in my life, I'd buy a Corolla. And 44 million people have agreed with me. So it hits number 1 again over about 50 years and so many different platforms. I don't have a lot of love for it, but by that argument I would take the F-150 off too. So now we're going to move on to honorable mentions. Now these are 3 cars that I'm completely shocked at how much they actually sold. Okay. Number 1, the Nissan Sentra and its different nameplates around the world. Over 16 million. of those have sold. I'm absolutely stunned at that. Next would be the Chevy Impala. Now, that is such a classic name of these big, large cars. Certainly, I remember the Impala of the 2000s, I guess it was, black with the SS, the Impala SS, with basically a Corvette engine in it. Just what a ridiculous car. But that nameplate has sold over 13 million vehicles. I'm absolutely stunned at that. And then last, for honorable mentions, I'm going to go with the Oldsmobile Cutlass. Over 11 million sold. Now, I did recently the reaction video to a Motor Week retro review of the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme of 1984, I think it was. And that was a huge seller. And for a number of years, the Cutlass was the #1 seller in America. But still, to see that it sold over 11 million vehicles over its lifetimes absolutely stuns me. Now, there's a lot here that I could get into. There are a number of cars that have sold 8 million, 5 million, things like that. Whether it's Mazdas or whether it's European cars that have had really strong sales. I mean, I could go on for a while and have a top 20 list, but I'm gonna truncate it right there. If you have a favorite that sold in that $4, $5, $8 million range, and I didn't mention it, hey, you know what? I'm really sorry, but I had to stop the list somewhere. But that leaves me with one gigantic question right here. There's a vehicle, I believe its sales has to be in the $20, $30 million range. It's not listed on any top 10, top 20 list I found. It's not listed on their Wikipedia page. I cannot find a summary of how much it sold. Okay? If you can provide me with a legitimate resource that totals this up, let me know, because where are the General Motors trucks on this? Where's that CK1500? Where's the Silverado? Where's its GMC counterparts? If the F-150 sold more than 41 million, I believe the GM trucks have to be somewhere, I think truly somewhere in the $30 million sales range, which would put it somewhere around number 3 or 4. But I can't find anything that shows me that. So I didn't include it on the list, but I believe in my gut it's got to be there somewhere. So if you know, let me know below in the comments. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this. Please, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please thumbs up this video. I'd love to get this out there and let more people be able to see it and comment on it. Let me know what they think. So I appreciate it, guys. Peace out.